Welcome back to the Speaking and Communicating podcast. I am your host, Roberta. If you are looking to improve your communication skills, both professionally and personally, this is the podcast you should be tuning into. And by the end of this episode, please log on to iTunes and Spotify and give us a rating and a review and what you would like for us to discuss on this podcast. Speaking of communication, when it comes to the gut and your mind, there is this mind-gut connection that we will be focusing on today with my guest, Lauren L.C. Wells. She is the CEO of Hervival. She is a holistic wellness and self-care expert, and she's here to talk to us about how the gut is affecting how we feel and all the mental issues that come with that, and how this affects business overall. Now, before I go any further, please help me welcome her to the show. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Roberta. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on the show. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, again, I'm Lauren Wells. I am from New York, and I am definitely a family woman, no children yet, but definitely a proud godmother and auntie. And I definitely claim my husband as my first child, my first baby. So I am a newlywed. I haven't only been about 6, 7 months being
Congratulations.
married. So I am a newlywed. Yes, I'm definitely a very loving, open person, a true healer at nature innately, way before I even got into this work. And yeah, I definitely am a big family oriented person and love to spend time with family, traveling, having fun with friends and families. That's definitely things that I love to do outside of my work.
That's amazing. And just as I was saying that a lot of the time people think, oh, if you don't have kids, then you're not a full family. You and your husband are a full family, by the way.
Yes.
Right. So back to this. How did you get started or have an interest in anything related to health?
Yeah, so I've been in the health, wellness, fitness industry. I guess all of my, like, as long as I can remember, since even high school. I went to a vocational high school studying nursing. But when I started making a career choice after college, I studied rehabilitation. So I had the choice to either to be a therapist. So I definitely have some training in the mental health aspect, but at one point when I was coming out of college, I thought I wanted to go more for occupational therapy, but still working with patients who had disabilities, physical as well as mental. But I actually started to migrate more. My way of getting into more of the Western philosophy, where you kind of go from like the Western and Eastern, and started going more into holistic healing. I would say when I started getting into it more in fitness. I got into fitness in 2008. I was going into the military after college. I just felt like, okay, I had a whole like midlife crisis right out of college. Like I actually graduated college in 2008, right when the market crashed. So jobs were just like scarce. Pay was horrible. Again, I said I live in New York City, so it still wasn't cheap, right? And I decided that I couldn't maintain my student loans living on my mom's couch. I was like, this isn't working. So I decided to go to enlist in the U.S. Navy. And I never was physically active or anything like that. I had to be, in order to get in, and it sparked an interest to get into fitness. I started to go to the gym, started seeing a change in my body. Some of my friends were all like, oh, that's my trainer, going and work out and stuff with me. Long story short, I actually had an injury. I burnt my leg a couple days before shipping out, and I ended up getting kicked out because I couldn't go.
Sorry.
But everything that we go through pays its purpose, right? And I never would have worked out. I would have never got into fitness if it wasn't for that journey. So over some time, of course, I went back into the human and health social service field working with adults that have mental disabilities, but only like a year out, I was like, this is still not serving me. It's not making enough money, but I still stuck to fitness. And it took some years, but I realized the path that I wanted to partake on and that calling that was coming upon me and seeing how much the fitness was making a difference in my life. I decided to go ahead and become a fitness trainer. And then it just started to open up another door after another door, realizing that, okay, it's more than just working out. Because I would work out and feel like that was an excuse to eat anything I want. Where I used to go to the gym, there was like a Dunkin' Donuts around the corner. There was like the halal truck. So I used to go and get that and all the extra sauces and a milkshake, like all those after
How
work.
counterproductive.
Yeah, so I just thought like, oh, I worked out for it. And then I started to learn, I started to experience my gut health issues. I later ended up having what the layman term of leaky gut, and started to notice a pattern of like depression and other issues. Of course, life took its turns. I had a big life change, trying to go into the military, get kicked out, and then back to where I didn't want to be. But I realized how much when I started to pay attention to gut health, started getting into nutrition and understanding from more of a holistic aspect than just diets, calories in, calories out, and started getting into a lot more mind body healing modalities. I started to really learn the connection between the two, and started to see the patterns of my mental health state, the patterns as I started to take care of my gut health, how much it started to clear my thoughts, my concentration, so many of those aspects. And then it just started to, be years of just continuing to dive down that path.
It's interesting. I hear you say that it's becoming more mainstream now, sharing this knowledge of the mind-gut connection. I remember back in the day, remember when you first went to the first buffet you went to, and you eat all this food, and afterwards, how do you feel?
They say you get the itis, right? You feel all tired and sleepy.
You're
And it's like
sluggish. You hate
itis.
everybody. You don't want everybody to just leave you alone. Because again, that connection of I filled up my gut way more than I should have with all half the wrong things. And my body, how it's feeling, my mind, everything just becomes that way. So it's almost like we've always known this, but we didn't probably pay attention to
Yeah.
that connection.
Yeah. And that's why I am super big on mindfulness, right? Because we just kind of roll with things how it is and think that's the way of life. And oh, it's the itis. And then, in certain people's families and cultures, itis is like a laughing joke. Oh, she got the itis, that
I
food
know.
knocked her out. And it's like, it's not supposed to. If we even start understanding what itis is inflammation. So it's like when we start kind of having that understanding and knowing that food is supposed to give you energy, we're supposed to eat for energy. And we're not supposed to eat to feel like knocked out, tired, lethargic, moody, get away from me. Oh, and as we allow the taste buds to overcompensate our awareness of what the food is doing to our body. And then that's why having some understanding, some education, and that's what I always do, a lot of like workshops, sharing this and giving the awareness of this and paying attention on how it feels in the body, and then the after effect. Because sometimes, like, yeah, you might eat the particular food and they may also, maybe you don't get itis, but you get gas and bloating, and then later you start noticing you're having or you get a headache with certain foods, or you get achy joints. This is why it's super important. And this is why I always share, like, your hormones communicate, and your hormones live in your gut, right? And they communicate to your brain. So your brain can communicate to the organs to share like the different things it needs to share. Oh, I'm hungry. Oh, I'm sharing, shut the other things down that's going on in the body, because we got to do a lot of labor and work into the gut off of what we got, what was eaten, so we can try to dismiss and distribute the toxins, like all of that, right? So all that feeling tired and sluggish is your body is going to work, like exhaustion work almost. And it has to like slow you down, put you to sleep, or whatever the case. And one of the things where I talk about how the gut and the mind is connected is through one of the longest nerves in your body, which is known as the vagus nerve. And it connects from the brain to various organs throughout your body, and your gut is one of them. And it plays a super, super important, crucial role with regulating the body's main functions. And that's your heart rate, your digestion, and your immune response. So when we start kind of understanding that food is almost like data that you put in a computer to make it work, you start thinking a little different of what is the right type of data I need to put in this computer to get me to work effectively. Give me more energy to get me start thinking better, and I'm not moody or groggy or having aches and pain. So those are the things I always share, like with my clients and my workshops and my community, when we do like our master classes, things is getting them to think to that capacity. And it literally starts to change a whole concept of what health and wellness is. And it's not this vanity thing of just, oh, I'm going to eat healthy so I, starve myself so I can just have a smaller waistline. If we learn how to actually function from the mind, body, and spirit aspect in all its capacity, we can be able to start knowing and understanding and listening to our body in a better way. And it can shift and change the concepts of the importance of what your health really means, because health is wealth, period.
Health certainly is wealth. Remember when before we started recording, when you mentioned the vagus nerve, I wrote it down because a few weeks ago, it's been about 3 weeks now, less than a month ago, I had these heart palpitations at night all of a sudden. They will last throughout the night. If I eat something that doesn't agree with me, the palpitations will last for about a minute or two and they're gone. Mm-hmm. But throughout the night, and I was like, no, I got to do something. I think I'm having a heart attack. I think I'm having heart issues. And when we went to our nearest clinic, I did an EKG. My heart rate is fine. The numbers are fine. The blood pressure numbers are fine. And then it got to me being introduced to this whole idea of the vagus nerve, the foods that are potentially could be triggering those palpitations. It's the nerve, because even though it feels like your heart is pumping and you might have a heart issue, but it's not actually the heart. I remember one night I woke up and the palpitations were right on my throat. I'm like, this thing doesn't make any sense. That's how I was introduced to the vagus nerve. Do you find that a lot of people are aware of what it is in their body, how it works, and what it does?
In most cases, no. And I was definitely one of those people, even with my background, in starting out from nursing, very large, it's a very small percentage when it comes to nutrition, but also don't share in the aspect of how the body responds, to nutrition. I had to go through years of understanding. I'm still continuing to learn and understand and get the more understanding. So I would say no, because if I've been sitting here learning this for years, and I just recently might have started learning about the vagus nerves maybe about 12 years ago, in a sense, it's still gathering a more understanding of that connection, especially where you talk about like the heart palpitation. I had that experience before. I thought I was having a heart attack at one point. And then you feel it in your throat. It's a nerve twitching, but no, a majority don't, because it's not mass education, and the body's just so complex, it's a lot to kind of gather and learn. So just as a base education, no. And sadly, a lot of us start to dive into these things when we start having the problems.
Yeah, because as I said, before this, I had not even been exposed to that. Because I knew about the mind-gut connection. The more we talk about mental health, which you're going to dive into deeper just now. But leaky gut, which you mentioned earlier, it's usually leaky gut. You have a leaky gut, check your food, check how you eat, check how you respond to eat. Some even suggest make a food diary. But the vagus nerve is the very first time that I was introduced to the idea and what I'm feeling and understanding my body even further. So what is this thing of a leaky gut?
Yeah, so leaky gut for like people who like it's not a real, it's like a layman's term, but it's something what people understand. The actual term of leaky gut is when there's is increased intestinal permeability, right? But when you say that, do you even understand? Like when you hear leaky gut, you have a more understanding of like, okay, there must be a leak in my gut, right? So pretty much, leaky gut is a sense of where there may have been some perforating in the intestinal lining, and then toxins can be able to go through and get into your blood. So a lot of times when people have like blood deficiencies, blood issues, autoimmune things of that nature, it could go back to the issue of having leaky gut. And that was my instance. So I had some issues where I was having a lot of digestive issues, even to the point where if I just drank water, I was having a lot of stomach abdominal pain. And then I was having like very raw body acne as an adult, like out of nowhere. And I'm like, okay, I didn't even have these things as a teenager. It took a lot of gathering, understanding, talking to doctors, things of that nature, because it's not a full understanding. They just think, oh, here's some topical things, and no one's looking at the root. And that was the shift for me to start really diving in and getting an understanding and gathering and realizing that a lot of people, and with some doctors at that time, I felt like this maybe been about 14, 16 years ago at this point, didn't know or understand, they just adhere to the symptoms and no one's looking for like the root cause. But with leaky gut, it really roots back to there's a distress known as dysbiosis going on in the gut that has more than likely weakened the intestinal walls, and it expands and open. I always teach the intestinal walls is kind of like your hands being together, and I always say it's like this gate. And if we eat certain foods that cause inflammation, or any medication, anything that causes inflammation in the digestive system, when you think about inflammation, it bulge, right? And as it bulge, it starts to open and spread. And then around, I always say there's a thing called the villi around
Yes.
intestinal walls, and it's kind of like your fingers, almost like this finger, like, and it's these little spongy looking things around. And when those get weak, because they're the ones that's supposed to give like a web like in between. And when it weakens and it starts to like drop in a sense of the strength of it, then that's how things, certain toxins from the foods can start to permeate through and start to get into the blood. So that's the essence, and of what the true term of increased intestinal permeability, aka leaky gut, really is.
Mm. Speaking of toxins, when we say this week I'm detoxifying, you said when the leaky gut situation happens, it's the toxins going to your bloodstream. So does that mean you are taking them away into your gut so that you excrete them from your body? When you say I'm detoxing.
Yeah. So detoxing, it totally depends on what, right? It could be as far as eliminating certain foods, not all, depending on what people are doing with detoxing. Ideally, a true detox that can help in the matter is more so, especially in the matter of leaky gut, is detoxing in the sense where it can pull toxins from the blood, like cleanse the blood. But yeah, detoxing can go into so many baths, but in the form of true detoxing, it's eliminating, right, the certain foods that can cause inflammation, foods that like sugars and fried foods, things of that nature. And then it does need to incorporate some sense of um, like I always say, like detox needs to be in a sense of a magnet, right? So it needs to incorporate some type of herbs, whole food supplements in some form that will detox to pull, and then also return back and nourish. at the same time too, because as it pulls, you're going to be, it could probably pull and deplete certain nutrients that you need to always bring it back in.
So you must eat or drink those that will pull the detox and then replace with nutritional value where there was the pulling of the toxins. Okay. So when we talk about, so just one last thing on the digestive system before we go into mental health. So when we talk about eat healthy, does that mean all of us should go vegan, or is everybody's body different, digestive system different?
Everybody's body is different. You really have to understand and know how your body responds. Also, too, your body is different in different seasons, depending on, certain foods that I can now eat today, now that I have a healthy gut state. I couldn't eat when I was having all the leaky gut issues, even though they were healthy foods. So vegan isn't to say, because there's vegan foods that's not healthy, right? So at the end of the day, eating healthy needs to be whole foods, period, that's given full nutrition value that your body can be able to metabolize and digest. And it's a matter in the stage of where you are when it comes to your gut health state, as well as in the time and the seasons of what your body can metabolize, your, believe it or not, your environment of where, people live, the body responds different. I mean, just think about on the outside, right? When you go outside in the cold, you shrivel up, you're cold, like, and then you have some people whose bodies are adaptable to that. So you have different people who can be able to metabolize different types of food. So this is where mindfulness and awareness is a big gathering and understanding. I did some studying. I recently, about a year or two ago at this point, did Ayurvedic. I started gathering and understanding Ayurvedic nutrition. And before that, I was big on like vegan. I was living more plant-based and everything. But with Ayurveda, one is understanding what they call dosha type. So they do a gathering and understanding of what the body type is and the true nature of the person's body. And then also too, it goes into the seasons of time and how the body responds in those matters. It can be very complex, but some aspects of those things, like, and I've even seen with clients that I've worked with where that protocol, even for myself, may have not worked. So this is why it's always important to gather and understand, because your body also becomes adaptable but by what you've been eating, whether it was correct or incorrect, right? So you have to kind of gather in the times of like what you eat. Now, what I would say about vegan is when it comes to whole plant-based foods that came from nature, from the ground, those are good foods to implement. But there's certain people, certain body types where they may need animal products. And that was something that brought a big awareness to me when I started understanding Ayurveda. And I went through a protocol, a cleansing detox protocol called Panchakarma, and they used animal products to heal, and food combinations. It really depends on how we pair food, with certain things. So it just opened my mind, big time, and realized that vegan isn't the answer for everything and everybody. And in most cases, more of really paying attention to sugar, food combinations, and in some aspects, the responding of how people really digest dairy, because that causes a lot of mucus. So I think it's a matter of really paying attention to the source where you get food, right? And then how you're pairing those foods together and how your body metabolizes it. Because we can all be like, oh, let's eat apples, it's the healthiest thing. And then someone may get very bloated and can't digest apples. And when I was having leaky gut issues, that was one of the things that was really causing the issue for me, apples. And then I had to learn, I had to stew them or cook them and heat them up and have more warming foods, at that time. Now I don't have that issue with apples, but that's why I said it really depends on your gut health state, how your body responds. And every person's body is unique and different.
Everybody's unique and different. And this journey sounds like an individual's journey rather than let's all do the exact same thing. When it comes to the work you do with your clients and their mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, burnout, stress, what have been the common threads that you found were the problem, and how, in summary, were they able to overcome those?
Yes. So one disclaimer, I'm not a therapist. So I work with therapists. I'm not a doctor. I work with doctors. So when depression, comes into state, there's things that I can assist with, help navigate through, but definitely always advise for my clients to work with the therapist to help in that capacity. Now, one of the things that I realized that is a big benefit, and I definitely seen this in the cycles of the groups of women that I work with at a mental health clinic that I work with, is when they started to pair some of the basic things, making some improvements, eliminating some of the toxic and inflammatory foods out of their diet, they definitely saw some clarity in the mental aspect as far as less moodiness, less feelings of um, depression. Um, so yes, those are things that is a big, like I said, just how the gut and the brain is connected as a two-way street. I feel like nutrition, gut health, and mental health is a two-way street too, because it's supporting the two organs, the two areas as far as your brain and your overall gastrointestinal system, your digestive system as a whole. So I just feel like they have to work hand in hand to see some improvement. So just as well as to work on the emotional state, what stressors are triggers, as far as with like work, family, things that we also have to look at what are the stress triggers with foods, because foods can be a stress trigger as well.
Foods being a stress trigger, um, which is also tricky because I mean we have our favorites. Even if I ate something and it gave me that vagus nerve palpitation, I might once in a while cheat because it's something we like. So we need to be disciplined on that. Now, you also talk about productivity, lower productivity due to mental health issues with employees. There was a Harvard study that said about 20% of US employees say their mental health is either fair or poor on a scale of, being great. And that they average about $47.6 billion lost annually due to absence and just low productivity overall. Would you like to share your thoughts on that?
Yes, I'm very familiar with that statistic, and I share and I talk about it all the time. And I feel like I play a very big part in decreasing that 47.6 billion that loss that caused an economy due to unexpected leave of absence due to a lot of times in mental health state burnout. When you whether the like this is why what we do is like we really want to support women, minority women specifically, because they have a very high percentage of dealing with stress, overwhelm, especially in leadership roles. They're trying to work twice as hard to serve themselves, to be heard and seen and respected, especially if they're amongst in the workspace where there's not many faces that look like them. So they want to prove themselves. And that kind of force sometimes does create a lot of overwhelm and anxiety and burnout at times, especially when they don't have a safe space to be seen and heard where they can decompress, get themselves back up, and then go back in, right? They're in that constant, I like to call superwoman syndrome. And one of the things that we do at Hervival is definitely making sure that we support women in and out of the workspace. So in the workspace, by partnering with these companies and bringing in this type of self-awareness, because just awareness creates changes. Awareness also kind of like just even having an understanding and understanding why you tick, why these things are happening, and you got a little root, to it that you can start making some shifts and changes. And I'm a big believer in 80-20 rule. So even kind of going back what you said of like, sometimes, you have everybody wants a little glass of wine, they want to go and have some fun. It's all about 80-20, have some fun, especially if it gives you the sense of like relief, some joy, or enjoyment. A lot of times food is wrapped around entertainment. But spend 80% of the time being like, making sure that you have a strong digestive system and, mental health aspect as well. So I really believe in the aspect of how does it actually produce productivity when you are helping individuals when it comes to their mental state, their aspects of mindfulness, like how I do it is definitely in mindfulness and speaking on mind body. One, educating and understanding this, but actually implementing very easily accessible, digestible, pun intended, exercises that can be able to implement very easily and shortly. And that's why I like to use the vagus nerve. I like to implement mindfulness practices that you could do to calm your nervous system. And just think about it. When you're in a calmer state, you can think more clearly. When you're in a distressed, high alert state, remember I said the gut and the brain is like a two-way street. There's a traffic jam that starts to happen because like the vagus nerve is overstimulated. So other organs are overstimulated. And when your body's in fight or flight, it's against so fight or flight is the sympathetic, you have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. And when it's overstimulated, other organs are heightened. Your heart rate is raised, and then also distress in your digestive system. So like if you were to eat and you're upset, you're going to hear all that gurgling, stomach can't digest because all the other organs are working. It takes so much to digest, and your body needs to be in the most calmest state, as we call rest and digest, to be able to do that so it can absorb the nutrients. It can distribute the nutrients that you're getting from your food to your body, where you can have the energy, you can have the mental clarity. So if we don't start bringing some awareness around this, we don't start implementing exercises and things to do, not just physical fitness, right? But more calming exercises, meditation, deep breathing exercises, having access to know of I always say we give a lot of tools to put in your toolbox. So when life comes at you in different ways, you know which tool to go and get. That's what we do in Hervival, and that's how we be able to build productivity in and out of the workspace, by giving and sharing the awareness, the understanding, and giving access to tools. When you have that and you have the right tools to be able to deal with the state that you're in, you can go back and be more productive. If you're stressed, overwhelmed, burned out, you can't even think clear. And there's been studies to show cells drops when in high distress states, and increase in a more better workplace environments, more clearer thinking, because you can function. So in order to get the body to function properly and respond and get the body more in rest and digest and out of fight or flight, you're overall productive, and that increases profits.
That makes perfect sense because, we always say companies where there's more productivity, the employees are more engaged, they come up with ideas, they're innovative. So if you're not functioning at your optimum, obviously those ideas aren't going to be flowing as much. Lauren, last piece of wisdom or advice for us to be mindful of this mind gut connection and what to do about it after listening to today's episode.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
What's one last piece of advice regarding the mind gut connection and what we can do going forward after listening to your expertise and advice?
Yeah. So I know a lot of this information sometimes can be overstimulating because it's like, oh my God, I got so much to do and learn. My first thing that I say, and this is why I always work in the front end, and this is why I've navigated a lot more into the mental health aspect and so much like meal plans, nutrition, and I still do, but I did a lot of like detox coaching and stuff. I started moving into the front part because when someone's super stressed, it's very hard that also everything we got to do to take care of ourselves goes down a long laundry list of everything where else we want to come back. But my best advice for everything and what we focus on the most is really starting to practice with deeper breaths. And that's what I'm very passionate about is, really adhering to the aspect of understanding just, bringing the awareness, and we're just passionate on helping women to smile and breathe deeper.
Breathe deeper. Words of wisdom from Lauren Elsie Wells, the CEO of Hervival, holistic wellness and self-care expert. Lauren, thank you so much for saving our lives by bringing this knowledge to us. We appreciate you for being on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Roberta. Been a pleasure.
My pleasure. And before you go, please tell us where we can find you on the internet if we want to know more about what you shared today.
Yeah, so my website is hervival.co. You can learn more about our services, what we do and offer. We really focus on having corporate wellness workshops. We do have virtual mindfulness events. We have one coming up. And also, too, we have our own community, which is accessible via our mobile app. So you can learn more about that on hervival.co. And I've been hanging out a lot on LinkedIn. So you can find me at Lauren L.C. Wells on LinkedIn. That's where I like to hang out and spend a lot of my time and share this awareness.
And that's where you and I hang out a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lauren Elsie Wares. Don't forget to subscribe, give a rating and a review on iTunes and Spotify, and stay tuned for more episodes to come.